Hey everyone, JoeSolo here. To recap, last video we concepted and blocked out our Space Ghost model. In this video what we're going to do is we're going to take that block out a little bit further and get our base poses going for our renders. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and let's go ahead and jump into the making of Space Ghost Part 2. In this video we're actually going to take things a lot further than a little bit. We'll get most of the high poly completed. I don't do anything special, I don't think. I do the whole thing in ZBrush. Masks or primitives that already come in ZBrush. You can see making the base geo for the lights. I use the knife tool to get my polygroups, and I was able to use those polygroups to get a nice base mesh from ZRemesher. I'm trying to hit the piece all at once, so you'll see me jumping from the cowl to some other areas, back to the cowl, some other areas. I try to bring up the whole piece at once. I'm looking at reference the whole time, mostly the Michael Keaton Batman mask and then just the Space Ghost design, and I'm allowing myself to figure things out as I go. I do want Space Ghost to look dramatic and a bit intimidating, so I do want kind of a Batman look to the cowl, you know, the idea that he's frowning or grimacing a little bit. I'm starting to get the feeling of the costume in there now, and I'm going to be adjusting the anatomy a little bit. Just because we're starting from a base mesh or even a scan store base mesh doesn't mean everything has the look and feel that we want, right? I don't want the base mesh to control what I want to do. I want to control what it is I want to do. The base mesh is just a tool. So I'll go through and I'll start adjusting the base mesh where I need to, and popping things and emphasizing things more than they were in the original base. We've already changed this quite a bit from the original. You can see that because I've got the feeling of wrinkles going in the body, and I'm starting to get the wrinkles in the undies, that it's already beginning to feel like this is a person in a spandex suit and not just a naked body anymore. And we're just using the clipping brushes and the knife tool to make his chest piece. And then ZRemesher to remesh it. I'm using ZBrush's remodeling tools there. And for the mat, for the Space Ghost logo, again, it's just a hand-painted mask and an extraction ZRemesher. I'm really not doing anything too complicated. Now you can see we're in Maya, and originally I was thinking about using Arnold, so I just brought the high poly in and started setting up a render. I just wanted to see how things were looking. ZBrush's lighting is not the best, so it is good to get your mesh into a scene with some real lights and some real shadows going. I'm taking what I have modeled right now, I'm getting it applied to my little rig, adjusting the skin weighting, and you can see we've got an approximation or a proxy of what the final pose might be, early lighting test might be, but the general look and feel of the character, I can make a lot of decisions now with what I need to push, what I need to change, what needs to look better. I'm going to start adjusting the belt now. Again, using the knife tool to get polygroups and to shape. Using ZRemesher to get a nice base mesh. And again, I'm just bouncing around the piece. I'm not spending too much time on any one area. I'm just making sure that everything gets in and accounted for and gets up to a similar level of detail as everything else. Getting started on the boots. This is all going to be knife, ZRemesher, move tool, And you can see you can create most of your shapes in ZBrush. You can create everything in ZBrush. You don't even need to necessarily make bring in a new primitive. You know, you can just duplicate geometry from other things. Trying to get the bottom sole, the boot to look right and to crease correctly. So that way when I subdivide it holds its edges where I need it to. Trying to just get a little bit of like trim on the top of the boot, just to give a little bit of visual interest. You know, Space Ghost doesn't really have boots in the original design, so I don't want to draw too much attention there in the boot design. You know, just something simple. Again, as I mentioned in the other video, I feel that Space Ghost feels a little bit more grounded in my design by having these boots and the exterior underwear. I'm going back to adjusting the anatomy on the arms a little bit. Now that I have all my pieces in place and they're all to a better level of detail, I can just start reassessing the proportions and how I want everything to feel. That's what's good about bouncing around the piece and building things all up at once is, well, one, everything feels like it was done by the same artist in like a similar session. What I mean by that is, if you do all the head on one day without doing the body and you do the body say another day, a lot of times it ends up looking like you sculpted it in two separate sessions. Whereas if you work the head and the body at the same time, even if it takes you multiple sessions, it all looks like it was done by the same artist at the same time. That's why it's always good to bounce around. You can see we're getting I'm starting to hint at the wrinkles for where the seams are. They just kind of look like lines right now, but I'll give a little bit more depth to them later. I just want to get everything that I have in my head and in my concept sort of accounted for in the high poly. I'm really not concerned with final look. And as always, sculpt and smooth, sculpt and smooth, sculpt and smooth. Now for those armpit wrinkles, I'm trying to imagine how they would be when I put the arms down. So the way I'm having a fan out, when I put the arms down, they look approximately like they should. I mean, it's all fakery, right? You're gonna have more like X folds and crossover folds in areas where they bunch up. You can see I have a little bit there. It's mostly lines going across, but you'll see little X's and Y's and, you know, folds that hatch over a little bit. That's usually what happens when folds start to bunch up. And then I'm going to just add folds behind the arms and a little bit behind the elbows and back arms, just to indicate again that this is a costume that's stretching over skin. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the back though, because it is covered by a cape, so any detail I do back there really won't be seen, so you won't really see anything back there. Space Ghost is wearing like a full spandex suit that covers his fingers as well, so I'm going to add wrinkles to the hands, as you can see. It all helps to sell that this isn't just a naked body anymore. So we won't get to all of the problem areas in the leg, but I do spend some time making the legs feel a bit more heroic and idealized, and, you know, the kneecaps as well. They didn't stand out enough. Get my leg seams in there. You can see, again, I'm just doing my seams by hand. Nothing special. Getting my tension wrinkles going. And just hints at them. You know, we can go back and refine at any time. I just want to understand where they're supposed to be. And boom, once I get those in, start adjusting the underwear. Don't be afraid to just, boom, move on to the next area and come back and revisit areas. It also gives your mind time to process and think about those areas before you come back to them. Same treatment on the boots. We've got our seams, and now we're going to put in some like X and Y folds near the ankle where there's some tension. Some indications of folds where the seams are. I'm looking at ref for all of this. And here we're just going to refine the high poly cowl a bit more. You can see this from the beginning of the video till now, everything is starting to look like much more refined. That's because we're hitting the piece all at once. So now it's starting to pop in that everything is making a much larger leap forward, and it's all starting to come together. It looks a lot more serious. It looks handled much better. It's starting to look a little bit more professional. And that's just because we're bouncing around. We're not spending a lot of time in one area, but we're also not leaving any area blank. When we went back to the cowl, we had something to work with that we'd messed with a little bit. And now we're going to start fixing up the face a little bit. I haven't spent too much time with the face. I realize that the mouth is open. We want to close it. I want to adjust just the proportions a little bit. Now that we've got our high poly pretty far along, almost every element is accounted for and taken to a level where sure there might be some polish, but nothing's going to look drastically different. So what we want to do is we want to get that high poly into a package like Marmoset or Maya Arnold. I decided to go ahead and take this thing into Marmoset. I'm not going to use Arnold anymore for the rest of the videos. It'll all be in Marmoset. And I want to see in Marmoset how the shadows are landing on my high poly model. So I just decimated out Space Ghost. I put him in there, and I'm checking my sculpture for a few things. I want to see how the shadows are casting. I want to see how my forms are reading. I also want to see what Space Ghost looks like in like a more realistic camera view or FOV. So right now I have it set to like an 85mm camera, and that it's still different than setting the camera in Marmoset is different enough that in ZBrush that setting a 75 or an 85mm camera in ZBrush will not yield the exact same result as an 85mm camera in Marmoset. I don't know why. There's just a little bit of a difference, and it is noticeable when you start going between the two packages a lot. So for me, I want the thing that looks the best. So at a certain point, I know that ZBrush is betraying me, and I want to go ahead and just focus on what the asset looks like in either Arnold or Maya, be it the high poly or the working low poly. We're getting our scene set up here with the high poly in Marmoset, so we get a read on everything. And this is also going to be our base scene as we move forward and change things. You can see me messing with ray tracing. Alright, well that wraps it up for part 2. Look out for part 3 in the coming weeks, where we start going further with our low poly, our UVs, materials, and everything else. Until next time, peace.